Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of LinkedIn Live. I'm your host, Suresh GP from TaUB Solutions. It's been great to see you all here at the start of the new year. So, Happy New Year, everyone. This is our first LinkedIn Live starting in the new year. And today we have a great topic and an awesome um, guest who is joining us. And let's start to hear from all of you. Where are you joining in? And our scope for today is a concept where we're going to talk about an important topic, which is on gamification and serious business simulations. The agenda for today is going to be to look at what is a serious business simulation, what makes it so powerful, how serious simulations are used to develop learning and new competencies. And we're going to hear from the master trainer as well as co founder of GamingWorks, Jan Schilt, who's going to share some experience on the value of these simulations. Now, before I introduce our guest, I wanted to give you a little bit of background on what is Jan's bio. So Jan Schilt is the master of science in human resource development. He's co-founder of GamingWorks, one of the world's leading serious business simulation companies. GamingWorks has over 600 registered partners in over 60 countries, offering simulation to their customers. He developed over 10 business simulations, of which Apollo 13 and ITSM Experience, The Challenge of Egypt, which is for project management, Fly for You about SAFE, Mars Lander about ITSM, and many more. He's an expert in designing creative learning interventions for many large organizations and facilitator of large group learning events. Jan has delivered 500 plus simulations all over the world for many large organizations and has a lot of experience with team and organization development. Jan is author of the books, The Process Improvement in IT Service Management, ABC of ICT and Introduction, and Series Gaming. So, with that, I would like to welcome Jan Schilt for today's session of GamingWorks business simulations. So, thanks, Jan, for taking time today for joining with us. I hope you're doing well. And where are you in today? At which part of the world?
Currently, I'm in Germany. I'm in a hotel waiting for a session tomorrow for a German partner, and so I'm preparing for tomorrow. So it's very nice to be able to run this session from my hotel room. That's why I did a little blur background because I don't want you to see my hotel rooms after after
Right.
being here. So thanks for inviting me, Suresh, and hope I can share some of the good ideas and good knowledge about simulations and how to use them.
Right. So, just as a part of a precursor, um, tell us a little bit about GamingWorks. When did you start off? And I say, remember, Jan, we have been in touch for the last 10 years now, ever since 2013, even before I started TaUB Solutions. And it's been a great journey so far working with GamingWorks and simulations. So, for viewers who do not know about GamingWorks and simulations, so why don't you take us through the journey about simulations?
Well, journey starts in 2002 when Paul Wilkinson and I met, and we thought training should be fun and dynamic. So we designed an Apollo 13 simulation, and that was based on a pile of cards that Paul created. And on a conference, I just met Paul, and he said, "Yeah, I want to do something with it. I'm not sure, but." And a few days later, we were in my office, and we are designing Apollo 13. And Paul was very enthusiastic about it, and he told his boss, he was working for a company, and the boss said, "Oh, that's good news because we have a customer. They asked for a simulation." But the simulation was not ready. We only had an idea, but this partner offered it to a customer. And the good news was that the customer wanted to run the workshop as a pilot. And the pilot was so good that we drove home, Paul and I, and the customer called the partner and said, "I want 100 workshops." So you can imagine that we thought, that's interesting. It sounds like we have to build a company.
Right.
So that's how it started. And 20 years later, we built all kind of simulations about project management. And the key principle of our simulations is always based on a best practice, because we believe that the training with just slides gives you the knowledge on what we call a repeatable level, but it doesn't mean you understand it. I will come back to that later in one of my slides. But we thought interactive learning, apply what you just learned in an exciting environment, and it worked. And well, as you said, Suresh, we have now a lot of partners around the world and over 1,000 trainers trained in the last 20 years. And everybody is, well, every day, 3 or 4 simulations are played somewhere in the world. So it's really, really proud. We are really, really proud about this, that we built this little company because we only have 5 people in the company. But you see, we have very loyal partners in the world.
Awesome. And I think I wanted to kind of call out people, if you've just logged into this LinkedIn Live about business simulations, serious business simulations, please put it on the comment window where you're joining from, which part of the world. And if you have questions, we are going to take questions as we go. One of the powerful part of the LinkedIn Live is to answer live questions, but we'll ask our guest today, Jan Schilt, to go through these sessions. And over the last 20 years that you have done, how many simulations have you kind of built it? And is it now in online? Is it more physical? How is that being dealt today?
Yeah, well, I think the total at this moment is about 15 simulations that we have in portfolio. And some of them are very popular, like DevOps and SAFe and service management. And some others are not so popular because, yes, the world is changing and the subjects are changing. When the pandemic hits us all in 2020, um, our sales went down from a lot to zero for at least a month at that moment. And I thought, okay, we have to do something. And I started an experiment. And the experiment was very basic. How can we run simulations online? And does it make sense? Well, the good news was in that bad time that a lot of people start working from home.
Right.
And they still need to do the daily stand-ups. They still need to do DevOps. They still need to solve incidents. So we thought, if we start with the Phoenix project and the Marslander to put it online, maybe we can help organizations to learn how to work with a Teams or a Meet session and on a mural board to visualize work. And it worked. So the experiment went very well. And if we look back, we sold about 1,500 or 2,000 online simulations in the 3
Wow.
years. And still today, about 20% of all the simulations in the world are still online because we got access to companies who are, well, in America, where traveling is not so easy, or companies are distributed over the country. We can see it in Latin America. We can see it in China, where the COVID the pandemic hits very bad, and people were not even allowed to move to the office. So we had a lot of online opportunities, and still today we still have online workshops and online simulations.
Awesome. I'm just going to give you a part of how people are joining up. We have Suchita S from Mumbai. Thanks, Suchita, for joining. We have Kalidas from Bangalore, India. We have Isimol from California, US. It's pretty early. Thank Isimol. We have Shivai joining from New Delhi. And we have Vernon joining from South Africa. Thanks, Vernon. We have a partner in crime, Keith Sutherland, joining in from his Peoria. Wonderful to have Jan, and that's what he says, Jan. Awesome.
Yeah.
So take us to the journey of what does it take about simulations? How are they different? And what does it take for us to move this forward? Right. I mean, I know you talked a little bit about your partners 400 plus partners, 60 countries,
Mm.
1,000 plus trainers. But let's
Yeah.
talk about, for viewers, what the simulation game is. It like, because we have been traditionally focused on project management, IT service management in a part of ITIL 4
Mhm.
foundation class. Now, how is this simulation going to be different for people who have got some knowledge by learning a book, reading a book, or undergoing a training? How is this going to be different by doing
Mhm.
this simulation game?
Well, the first element is that we take people out of the daily work environment. So if you work for a bank, it doesn't make sense to put you in a bank to
Right,
practice because learning is also transferring knowledge from one context to another, which means from a classroom into a new context. So one aspect is we always build challenging environments like a mission control center of NASA or the ancient Egypt environment to build a pyramid out of Lego or a flying company or an airline company. So that's very important to put people in an environment that they don't know. So they really need to start from the bottom to experiment and have a kind of learning by doing experience. So that means the simulation should be an interactive learning environment. And interactive means interaction between roles in the team, your colleagues or co-students, but also interaction between the game leader and the team. Because, well, yeah, don't misunderstand me, but a good simulation is about punishing people and rewarding people.
right,
Now, punishment doesn't mean hit them with sticks, but it's about show them the consequence of their decisions
right,
or the choices. So the interactive learning is in a 4 or 5 rounds exercise, give people a chance to do something and see immediately what the effect is of their decision. So that's one element. The other element is you need to let people challenge problems that they recognize. Because the best feedback you can give is that people say, well, this looks like my company. Or, hey, what's happening here is exactly what happened yesterday.
right,
But the challenge is that today in your workshop, we can challenge you to fix it because we create a safe environment where people are allowed to make mistakes and where maybe the teacher can do a timeout and say, hey guys, stop. What's happening here? Yeah, he's not listening to me. Okay, so how can we solve this? So what you do as a facilitator is you use a safe environment to let people solve problems that they face every day, but then not under pressure, but as a learning environment. The other thing is that you want to let people interact. So it's not a teacher who will tell students that something went wrong. So the challenge is that the teacher or the facilitator will stop the session and ask some questions until someone give feedback to someone else. So for example, if in a simulation like Apollo, the flight director is not escalating to the mission director,
right,
then we expect that the service desk, for example, or Capcom will say, hey, I expect you to escalate. So that interaction between people is crucial. So you can say these are all key elements where people play, experiment, explore, have chances to improve each round. And at the end, the big challenge for the teacher is to send people home with a success. And that doesn't mean that you have to save the crew or finalize a pyramid on time. It means that you go home and said, wow, I learned a lot. And yes, we lost the crew. And yes, we overspent the budget, but we learned a lot. So I think
yeah.
that's the yeah, a few aspects of a successful simulation.
Well, I remember, Jan, I was just running Apollo 13 online simulation a week back or a couple of weeks back. And the people were they completed they had knowledge about IT service management. They thought they knew about all processes and practices. And when they came back and said, Suresh, we learned so much and we split it out into 2 4 hours of the Apollo 13 online simulation. We had 7 people. And
Yeah.
they said, we never knew how interesting it was. We didn't look at the time; it just flew away. But uh, we started writing down all the things that we should do. Go back to the
Yeah.
workplace. So that's the part that you were insisting about is they reflect upon the situation which is in the organization, but they also
Yeah.
take notes and saying, okay, what am I going to do when I go
Yeah.
back to my workplace with the lessons learned today that I can apply back? And I think, to your point, when we did the simulations and all the simulations, we go back with the action plan from the team to the
Yeah.
sponsor and
Yeah.
say, this is what your team found out after the simulation game, and this is what they want to
Mm.
practice as
Yeah.
desirable behaviors
Yeah.
into the workplace. So that's so powerful. And I can say
Yeah.
playing this for the last 10 years has been amazing.
Yeah, and I think what you just described is, I think, very crucial for the people are listening to this session, because the game itself is always fun. People like it. Nobody will leave the room before the end of the session. But the crucial thing is what you just explained is, how do we get people back to the office and starting to translate the outcomes into day-to-day work? Because the real learning will take place after the session.
Right.
And the value of this workshop is only measured if we see people applying the theory in day-to-day work. And that's why you don't need to underestimate the importance of a proper intake. And I bet that most of the people in this call who are trainers of ITIL Foundation or Prince 2 Foundation or whatever, I don't think that everyone does a proper intake before they start the training. They just start with slide 1 and end with slide 300 and
Right.
tell the jokes on the certain spots in the presentation. But for the simulation, you have to do an intake, because you need to know the problem we want to solve. You want to know who will attend, why do they attend, what we expect from them. And that makes the simulation a very powerful instrument, because it's a before, during, after structure, and not just a one-day exercise.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is an interesting slide, Suresh, because if we talk about the previous slide, we talked about what are the key elements of a successful simulation. And I keep those 10 items always in my mind when I design the simulation. So I need 10 problems. I need 10 success factors and so on. But there are also a few ingredients why a simulation is so powerful. And this slide will show a few elements. Well, the first one, the left top corner, is the learning cycle of Mr. Kolb. And if you look at the learning cycle, it looks a little bit like the PDCA circle.
Right.
But personally, I like this a little bit better from a learning perspective. So most of the people, they are what they like doing. So that's the top box. And that's great. So during a simulation, we let them do. Run the workshop, solve problems, good luck. But the reflection, the second step in the learning cycle, is about exploring. And a lot of people make mistakes, because what they do is they go immediately to thinking and decision. They step up and they create a visualization board, but that's not learning. The learning is that we first explore together what happened, are we happy about this? And then we come to the third step, and that's thinking. And thinking means, what can we do about it? And this is an interesting part, because you can rely on the students who come up with great ideas, but what if they have found a problem, but they have no clue how to fix it? And that's the moment where the facilitator can bring in theory. And that's very important, because you don't bring in theory and say, well, here's the theory and see what you do with it. No, we turn upside down. First the question, and then the need to fix the situation. So then the theory will be taken by the students and immediately translated into a decision. Yes, we're going to use it in the next round. So this learning cycle is something that should be integrated in a successful simulation. And the funny thing is, a lot of students who leave the room, they remember that the Kolb learning cycle can be applied the day after.
Right.
Right? Because this means tomorrow you can use it. I think everyone in this call, I think they use it. If you have a hard day of work, you drive home in a traffic jam, I bet that you are reflecting when you
Yeah.
wait for a traffic light. I
Right.
bet you think and you can't sleep because you have made the decision, tomorrow I will do things different. Well,
Yeah.
so that's a key element of a successful simulation.
Well, I also understand in this part of the cold cycle, when you do these reflections, when they come up with the continuous improvement plans, it's not our plans. And I ask them, go back and say, okay, you identified what I'm going to give you 15 minutes of time to do the thinking, which is continual improvements. But you come back to me and say, what are you going to do in the next round? Because
Yeah,
obviously the first round is pretty chaotic and
yeah,
the second round gets a little better. But
yeah,
I think they feel that they have improved by themselves. So I'm not saying the reports, the stats shows that they are progressing towards the part. And
yeah,
I also like the way that you have designed the games, Jan, because every round gets a little tougher and tougher.
yeah,
So they need to really step up the game. They need to really understand, collaborate, share, and then move forward. So that's
yeah,
a whole lot of learning opportunity for them
exactly.
as they start to
Yeah,
reflect with post-it notes
yeah.
and stuff.
The other thing is that, and I think I can refer back to what Keith is asking, is this approach on simulations versus classroom learning. And that's the Bloom taxonomy. So if you look at an average training and theoretical training, then the level of learning is on the remember level, the purple level. And the reason is that the only reason why people go to an ITIL foundation class, for example, is the exam. And an exam at this moment is just a test if you can remember theory. But if you really want to go back to your office, you need to understand what you just learned. A lot of people know the definition of an incident and a problem, but do you understand what it is? Do you understand the difference between the incident and the problem? And if you understand, you can apply it in any circumstance, even in the supermarket. You can apply IT service management principles if you understand it. And if you design a simulation, then you bring the learning on the level of understanding and application, because the theory is used in a complete different context. And if you can, are you able to do this? Then you understand. So that means that the simulation will reach a little higher level of understanding. And of course, if you want to send people to an exam, I don't think that you need 300 slides to prepare people. I think if you run a simulation and instead of too much thinking and decision making according to Kolb, if you talk about theory and people prepare, because now the exam is decoupled from the training, people need to do
Right.
it online, so you can do it a week later.
Right.
Then I bet if you understand the principles of IT service management, for example, ITIL 4, by playing a game, and you study the book, I bet you pass the exam.
Yeah.
Okay, but that's my personal opinion.
Right.
Another thing is that in the middle, you can see 70, 20, 10.
Right.
So when you design training programs for professionals like we all are, then scientifically it's proven that we as people in this call, 70% of what we know is because we experience this in projects, in exercises, in meetings. We just try out. And 20% is by coaching or mentoring. It's
Right.
listening to a colleague or people. And 10% is a classroom. I didn't attend any training in the last 20 years. I didn't do it. I was talking to people. I was experimenting. I was at a conference where I was listening. And sometimes I read something, but I didn't read any book. I didn't follow a SAFE training or a Prince2 training, nothing. So I work with people and experience. And I think a simulation is a perfect example where we combine the 70-20-10 inside the simulation, because the 70% is all the doing and reflection.
Right.
And finally, on the right side, you can see that if you do things and if you talk about it, if you use the theory, then you will learn and keep in mind what happened much more, and you can reuse it in any context that will come. Yeah.
No, I think I totally agree with that experiential learning part of it, right? I still remember vividly all the goof ups that I did in projects, because when you did something and you got backfired, it tells you. It's like, see, if you have got questions. So this is the question that we answered. I would enjoy
Yeah.
hearing Jan's perspective on classroom and
Yeah.
learning. That's thanks. And we have more people joining in. We have
Peter,
Peter from Austria,
hi
Anu
Peter.
from Hyderabad, India, um, Bamsi from Hyderabad. We have Sunil joining in from Bangalore. Some of the people have been part of the simulation games in some form or the other, um, and then it's going on, right? So let's move on.
Yeah.
So how do we use these simulations? Is it to be done standalone, or should be combined with the traditional training courses?
Well, there are a lot of ways to use simulations, but what I put on this slide is a few examples. So one of the examples which is very popular, especially in the DevOps area and service management area, is that partners will add an interactive workshop on the third day of a training. So that sounds a little bit crazy that you do a 2-day foundation class followed by a third day, but partners are more and more convincing customers that maybe we can skip some theory
Right.
and integrate the simulation as the third day, which means that you will not do many exercises during the training,
Mhm.
maybe some exercises to prepare for the third day. For example, if you plan to run a simulation like Phoenix Project after a DevOps foundation class,
Right.
you can start with some exercises in the first 1 or 2 days related to the simulation. For example, if we talk about visualization, how would you visualize your work, for example? And then you can reuse that knowledge into the third day. Also from Axin, for example, they have the DevOps Master, and the DevOps Master requires an interactive part, and that could be an exercise that you do in your company, but our simulations are all approved by Axin as the practical exercise. So the second one is something what I sometimes do. I integrate the simulation into the training. So I skip all the exercises that are normally in a training, and I run the simulation in 2 days, and I split the game in small parts. So I do round 1 in the morning, followed by some theory, or the other way around. Round 2 in the afternoon with theory. And the funny thing is that a lot of people create theory. For example, you don't need to tell the theory about problem management.
Right.
If you play a game and suddenly there are 4 or 5 identical incidents, for example, in Marslander, then you can say, okay, let's stop now. So what are we going to do? Are we going to fix 4 incidents, or are we going to do something else? And there is always someone who says, yeah, we need to find a root cause.
Right.
Okay, how do we call this? Yeah? So integrated means you will play around theory. And so these are related to traditional training. What we see with the Phoenix project and the SAFE simulation, we see a lot of people who were using the simulation to kick off programs,
Right.
kick off new teams. In Europe and in the Netherlands, almost every bank is using DevOps or SAFE. Okay, people don't like SAFE, or not everyone likes SAFE, but the essence of SAFE is easy to learn in a simulation. So we see more and more projects kicking off with a group of people playing a game. And another opportunity is when you work for a long time with a team, you can use the simulation to do a kind of assessment, not to assess people if they can stay or need to leave the company, but a professional assessment. Where are we and what can we do about it? And the last opportunity is, and that's something we did in the last year, especially when COVID ended, a lot of companies restarted their teams. And we were asked about 10 or 12 times to organize a large group event with 100 plus people. So one example I want to share with you is a project with Heineken here in the Netherlands. They started a digital transformation journey, and then COVID came. And so the question was, how do we create that energy to get the teams up and running? So we run 6 parallel workshops in the Heineken environment. And I was the facilitator from GamingWorks, and I trained the Scrum Masters and the Agile coaches from Heineken. And they were delivering the simulations for their own people. And it was a kind of competition. So we had presentations at the end with the results and the key learning points. And the director of this unit, he was observing all the teams, and he closed the day with lessons learned and observations. And everybody loved it. It was not a full day, it was just a fragment, but it is a nice example where you can kick off a large group, especially when the type of simulation is exactly how they are going to work in their day-to-day work. So there are so many opportunities, and I think we could add one extra, and that is that you just use the simulation to prepare people for an exam. And especially when we look at FitSM, for example, the new service management model by Itemo, that is an example where you don't need special requirements for your training material. You don't need to be certified. And we have a few partners who are using the simulation surrounded by theory to teach people the 5 basic ITIL of service management processes. And they create a few slides to support the simulation. And we don't talk too much about people and interaction. We talk about theory. And the game is the funny part and the practical exercise.
Awesome. In fact, I and Keith had an experience with one of the client in the US in Ohio last February, where we did the business relationship management, fundamentals, BRMP, and the last day was the grab a pizza simulation. They loved it because they had the theory in the mind, but then they were able to relate it back to the workplace and say that this is outstanding. And I still remember working with Paul and you. Some of the simulations could be very powerful in conferences. Like, for example, we played the Grab a Pizza simulation for 3 consecutive years at the BRM Connect conferences. And people used to know me because I used to run the simulation along that. And I think there's a lot of more simulations happening around. So give us a little bit of simulations that are already in place with GamingWorks. There's a lot to your portfolio now.
Yeah, so let's go quickly through a few. You can see here the impression of our simulation. So you can say the essence is always people together, challenges. We don't tell them too much, so they have to find out how to create flow, how to visualize work. And you can see on one of the pictures how clever some people are. Look at all the colors of Post-its they created. And it's just one day. So one day of exercise. Okay, so maybe Suresh, you can click through a few slides. So there are a few new simulations on this list, but this is really the top 5 simulations that sell the most. I think the first one is the safe simulation, and that's really growing very fast. So this simulation is about not, let's say, a simulation that has the learning cycle of co-op in it. So it's not for rounds, but it's a journey. So we pull the students through a journey from strategy to prioritizing the backlog and to run a complete PI planning and then execution. So what they learn is how all those four steps are connected to each other.
Right.
And especially with the setting of business people, development teams, IT, and architects, they learn how to run a PI cycle of 12 weeks. And that's the objective of this safe simulation. And it's built with support from Scaled Agile. So
Right.
we work with the product owners of Scaled Agile. And the second one in line is the Phoenix Project. Well, that's based on the book by Gene Kim, very popular, fun, fast. And we are going to add some functionality from the online version, because the online version that we used has a little bit more functionality. And we see that the maturity of the DevOps people in the world is growing.
Right.
And so we see that some teams, they don't learn anymore from the current version. So we are updating this year with some extra features.
Right. So for people, for the people to just for listening here, these are the games based on IT management best practices. So SIAM stands for Service Integration and Management. ITSM stands for IT Service Management, DevOps. Then we have Scale Agile Framework and FITSM, which is a plain version of IT Service Management. Now, one of the brilliance of these simulation games is instead of boring people by theory, we are trying to look at some practicality of use case to have fun and learning. And particularly, Jan, with a hybrid model, do you think there is a combination of a physical versus an online that we can bring it together in terms of communication? So how do we, should we focus fully on a full-fledged classroom-based training or full-fledged online, or can it be a combination of classroom and online?
I think if you look at the simulation, we have that Marslander and Phoenix Project and Fly for You can perfectly done online.
Okay.
And we even did experiments with a few people at home and a few people in the office.
Right.
And I'm not an expert in breakout rooms and all the stuff, but we had some teachers who run PI planning online with 100 people or so. And I learned a lot from them. So I think it's possible. But you have to understand, why are we going to do this in a hybrid format? So if it's because, for example, in the Netherlands, some of the insurance companies and banks, they closed the offices. They simply said, look, we have proven that our people can work from home. So then you could say the reason to come to the office is strategy, team building, get to know each other. So in that case, it's nice to have a simulation to get the team together.
Right.
But if you want to learn how to work together, how to visualize, how to do daily stand-up, then you can use the online simulation to teach the students how to visualize work, how to use Mural and Post-its and so on. So I think you have to come back to the before, during, after. What is the goal and what is the best setting?
Yeah. Right. And these are few things that people are looking at it. And a lot of the things that typically how many people can play a game around, like, for example, let's say in a physical setting, what's the number of people who could play a game, mapping them towards the different roles?
I think that 10 people is a kind of optimum, because then nobody can hide, everybody is active.
Right.
And also the average classroom is big enough to have enough dynamic and walking.
Sure.
In online, we limited the numbers a little bit to 7 or 8, because too many people in a team session will not work. And if you have more people, like 12, 15, 20, whatever, then you should think about having 2 parallel sessions, where you have 2 teams in parallel or back to back. But 10 is a little optimum.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, so and this is one of the simulations about SIAM. It's a multi-vendor environment where we teach people to sign contracts and to integrate services from different vendors. And this is a game that we are building because in Holland a lot of services are outsourced, and funny to say that the game was not even ready when we already run the first simulations, because we
Right.
built it with some knowledge experts, and one of them said, yeah, give me the cards. I said, yeah, but they're not ready, they're still in PowerPoint, I have to cut them out nicely. He said, no, 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 I like it, and it looks nice. And now in this week we started the editing of the nice look and feel of the game. But you see, sometimes you don't wait for the killer product, you
Yeah.
just start. And with a good facilitator, he can walk around all the mistakes and so on. Yeah.
Awesome.
And yeah, and this is an interesting picture. So I put it in this slide because this is one of our trainers in the Netherlands in our office for Maaslander. And this is a great example of silos. Because if you look very careful to this picture, this is a service organization, but you can see all clusters of people doing things. On the left side, somebody is explaining, somebody is talking to his back, somebody is in the middle, two people are talking. On the right, you see three people are talking. On the back, you see there are two people standing in front of a whiteboard. So, and these are all experts that they all were here in Amsterdam to learn the game. You see what they do. They don't collaborate as one end-to-end team, but and this is Maaslander. So Maaslander is specially built for ITIL 4 and Verism. And it is also supported by Axelos and PeopleCert. So the funny thing is we are allowed to call it an ITIL 4 simulation.
Right.
And it helps people to understand ITIL 4, because ITIL 4 on itself is not so valuable. It is just a few principles you need to understand. ITIL 1, 2, 3 was much more valuable with all the processes and definitions. But still, ITIL 4 is very useful if you understand it.
Right.
So this simulation will challenge people to apply ITIL 4, the guiding principles, the 4 dimensions, the value stream thinking. And at the end, they say, I think I understand it. And then they can use it or recognize it in their own company. And yeah, the Phoenix project is based on the book. It's fun. It's about visualization, flow, feedback, and team building. 80% is for team building, to get new teams up and running. It's a one-day program. It's online available. And there is also a special Phoenix project for business. A small team, 4 hours, concentrating on business people who must understand what DevOps is all about.
Well, I think
And
one of the scenario that I had when I was in the US with Greg Sanker,
Mhm.
he invited me and said, "We do not want anybody to talk about DevOps. Okay, let's play some games to have fun because nobody wants anything as education and theory and stuff."
Yeah,
So I went to Portland and I went to Oregon and then I did the DevOps simulation. It was well received. And this was
yeah,
way back in 2016,
yeah,
2017 that we were
yeah,
talking about.
yeah.
And to your point, that the number of times that we have done, we also did one simulation in Singapore
Mhm.
where there was only business users. And they said, can you make DevOps very easy to understand? We don't want to get into the nitty
Yeah,
gritties of all the first wave, second wave, continuous experimentation and learning. And we said, what's the way? And that's where you built that DevOps for business, and they loved it.
yeah.
So there's so much value in some of these simulations being done house, and people never forget about the experience.
Yeah, and even people who don't know anything about IT, that they still learn. And but that's the quality of the facilitator, that you can use the right words and the right reflection instead of pushing the knowledge into the brains of the people. So a good facilitator is not per definition a good trainer, and the other way around. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, this is Fly for You. By the way, this is a picture of Heineken, and you see on the wall in the back, you can see the flow of work. From the left, it's a strategy with the OKRs, the
Ah,
objectives and key results. In the middle, a prioritized backlog. And on the right side, you can see the program board. And this team, you can see the guy who's standing up is one of the Scrum Masters. And this is his real job within Heineken. And I made the picture. I walk around. I didn't do anything. They were just facilitating the team, and they trained themselves in being a good Scrum Master. And the employees, they got to know this guy. So the day after, they say, "Hey, please do the same as you did in the workshop. Help us to become a better team." And the good news is that next Friday, I will be back in Heineken, because then we have the last exercise for the Scrum Masters to be certified. So that means Heineken is going to use our simulation internally to support the digital transformation.
wow.
And so that's more and more happening, that a customer like a bank or an insurance company or whatever say, look, we have so many people involved in this. We have our own Scrum Masters and Agile coaches. Why can't we deliver this workshop ourselves? And the same happened last week in Vodafone. Vodafone has 29 trainers trained by me in
Wow.
Phoenix Project, DevOps, and Apollo 13 to support digital transformation that was guided from Egypt. So all the people in Egypt are trained, and they are spread over the world to bring the message of digital transformation within Vodafone using our sims.
All
And so this is the simulation. You see, by the way, a picture of Vodafone session. Together we can, and that's the motto of the program that we are supporting.
awesome. I think the whole games have evolved. We can talk about ours to look at some of these stuff. So what I want to kind of look at is to take some questions as they come in, and ask people. So if you have any questions for Jan about the simulation games and what value we can bring in, but I want to give you a little bit of a perspective. Now, if someone wants to play the simulation for their game, for their organizations, what would you suggest? Now, well, would they need to go to a partner? What and what's the way that they can engage to do some of the simulation based on which best practices they want to run through?
Yes. So the business model that we have is that we offer licensing and certification to our partners. And that means we train the trainers, and we hope they sell it to their customers. So if there is a customer team and interest in a simulation, the answer is go to a partner, go to our website. You see a picture of the world, or go to Suresh if you are in India or in the US, or go to Keys if you are in the US. But there are also maybe people who say, look, I want to add this simulation to my program. And that's, well, part of our business model is that everyone in the world is allowed to use our IP as long as you pay the license fee and you are trained.
Right.
And so that's how it works. So we are very strict in our partner model. But as I said, Heineken and Vodafone, they decided to do it themselves. And and then we have to collaborate with the partner who has maybe in-house already to say, look, I'm really sorry, but you're not going to sell 150 workshops because they're gonna buy 150 licenses. And that's all in the game.
And tell us, Jan, in terms of, and I want to give reflect upon experiences playing the simulation game. Um, I've actually done this in three models, right? One is a standalone simulation game that I've gone to deliver it to our end clients globally. There's the
Mhm,
other part is combined with the course, like for example, the 2 day DevOps course with the Phoenix
mhm.
project simulation. We also did with ITIL 4 with Marslander simulation. Now, one of the things that you touched upon is if you look at TaUB Solutions, and you have had experience working with TaUB Solutions for the last 10 years, what do you think is TaUB Solutions' opportunity to facilitate such kind of sessions? what kind of value can TaUB Solutions bring in delivering some of these simulation games for clients globally?
Well, I think this counts for every partner. And so the first thing is that you should first of all listen to the problem that the customer has, because most of the customers, they ask for a product. I want an idle foundation class. I have 12 students. How much does it cost? And when can you offer it? So the easy answer is yes, I make you an offer and that's it. But imagine you ask the customer why. Why do you want this training? I think the challenge is to figure out what is the reason that this customer wants this product. And that gives you the opportunity to maybe offer the training, but also encourage the customer to think about the transfer of knowledge.
Hmm.
And that means you can meet both objectives. You can give the theory to the employees so they can, if they want, they can go for certification. But you can also offer the solution for a potential problem. And that could mean that you not only offer the simulation as it is for a one-day exercise, but like you said earlier in this meeting, you can offer them some coaching.
Right.
So you can encourage them and coach them to use the theory, because I don't know if you have the same experience, but at the end of the day, everybody's tired. And the students are very polite. This training was the best ever. Oh, I
Right.
have so much fun. But you're okay, it's nice to hear, but
Right.
from a learning perspective, you want to know what are you going to do tomorrow. And I think it's not the right moment at 5 o'clock in the afternoon to ask, what did you learn? What are you going to do tomorrow? People want to go home.
Right.
So my advice is, in talking about value, is always offer a before, a during, and an after. So even if you do an online call with the students a few days after the session, it could trigger them to ask for help.
Yeah.
And then you can help them transferring the knowledge. And that is the story and the part of the trainer that I do for anyone who wants to become a trainer. I said, look, you can really make more money if you are interested in the problem of the customer.
Right.
And
I think that's a very valuable point that you talked about. What value are you doing instead of just selling a class? What problems are we solving? And the
yeah,
more we solve, it becomes easier. But
yeah,
also, in my experience, as you rightly said, how can you connect the actual problem with the theory and the experience together?
yeah,
Well, we all talk about the most important quote: "People will forget what you did, but people will never forget what they experience, how they
yeah,
experience, right? The experience." So I think the
yeah,
simulation game is more towards experiential learning,
yeah.
adding value, but also having a lot more fun in learning by doing. Now, are you also seeing productivity improvements in terms of real world results after doing the simulations? If they go back to their workplace, have you seen some tangible results from the business and the corporates, as you, because you have done it globally? What has been the feedback? They had learning, they had applied, but what kind of improvements or tangible results have they uh, achieved after implementing some of the simulation games along with their knowledge and
Mm.
practices?
It's a very difficult question because, we run 2 or 3 simulations ourselves a year because we have a partner model. Yeah? So I don't know where our partners will deliver a training because they just order a license, and
Right.
I don't need to know where. But um, we have some experience, of course, when we do trainer or when we do a session. And what is, I think the most important thing is that if you know a kind of problem, for example, um, a few weeks ago, I was doing an intake for a Dutch partner. So together with the account manager and the trainer, we went to a customer, and I spent 1.5 hour with a director of an IT department and his colleague on the big whiteboard, and we were exploring the problem. And he asked for one Mars lander simulation. And during this exercise, I asked all kind of questions, like, why would you spend 5,000 euros? Why do you want 12 people not working for a day? They lose money. So this guy, who was really sweating, and I said, yeah, but I have a problem. I said, what is your problem? Yeah, this, we're losing money and frustration and this. And I all wrote it down on the whiteboard. So at the end of 1.5 hours, I said, look, this is your problem and this is what you want. Do you agree? And he said, it's the first time that people challenge me. And this is a consulting meeting and not an intake for a workshop.
Right.
And I said, now we come to the conclusion, one simulation doesn't make sense, because then 7 or 8 people will run the workshop, and then you have much more people. So my proposal is to have your team leads and your process managers in the simulation first. And I'm going to play that game. I will teach them how it works. And then you have 108 people in your IT department. And you have to run about 8 simulations after this. And my proposal and my suggestion is that the trainer that delivers the training will deliver the training, and your team leads will do the facilitation.
Right.
I think they have to learn how to make teams better, how to link what's happening in the game to the strategy of your company and your team. But it is an investment. But I think it brings much more value if you do the talking and not somebody from outside. And the director said, yeah, but wait a minute. I asked for 1 simulation and now you offer 8. I said, well, if you are interested in the program, I'm willing to give 1 for free, which is the first one. Because I believe that if these people are on board, you will really transfer knowledge.
Right.
And so they did. So we played the first game with the senior managers. They were sweating and arguing and blaming the game. But there is a meeting next week where we're going to explore the steps after this.
Right.
And so I'm not sure, of course, if this will save the company and we'll have 20% sales growth. But I think that many of our partners have the same vision. And I think that if you do it this way, we all build a little bit better companies.
Sure.
But, and that's the truth. Look at yourself. Are you measuring the results after the training? You're so busy. You go to the next opportunity.
Right.
But yeah, I think a
Awesome.
question from Simone.
Yeah, Simone says, I think doing that shows our care and compassion of the experience the customer is happening. It demonstrates the relationship facet. The game also shows up during feedback. I know a lot of people who have logged in because they have actually done some of the simulations before in different parts, right? So
Yeah.
it's part of the world. And yes, knowledge transfer and experience is the true value of these simulations, and using their own people to facilitate is gold. So we have last 2 minutes to go. So if there are any questions from people who have attended that, and please put also your comments on the value that you received from Jan's powerful session today on simulations and why this is going to help learning and development. A lot of people who are dialing in know that learning and competency development is one of the critical part in every human resource aspect. But it's not just about learning, but learning by doing, and applying some of these concepts in real world makes it magical, right? And we think that as we start to look at a lot of clients globally, people are looking at new ways of learning, new ways of working, and simulations are a great opportunity to trigger those conversations to be much more dynamic, but also have fun in the whole thing. So it could be a group event, it could be important for a learning objective. So think about instead of looking at a team bonding event, going to a party outside, you can actually invest on a simulation game to have real world experience sharing, and ways to work better, right? So thank you, Jan, so much for your valuable time today to share with our viewers on the value of the simulation games and what it matters. And for viewers, TaUB Solutions is a GamingWorks partner who are involved in the simulations of Marslander, Safe, Phoenix Project simulations, the Grab a Pizza, the Apollo 13. So if you are interested to know some of those games, do come to us and ask, and we'll be more than happy to support on your learning and development needs. And we wish you all great success in building a world-class organizations going forward. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.
Have a great day. Thank you.